So one of the most memorable experiences I had was in my early time of my stay here in Myanmar. I was going on a discovery tour in Yangon, and I was walking from the Lying Buddha here next to the Shwegondang Road. I was walking down and I met a guy, and he was like an older gentleman, and we just started talking, and he was like, come, I will show you something, So he was taking me down where the monks were living. They were having like their separate living areas, which was built, I think it was like somewhere underground, till up on the next to the next road where we crossed. And then he invited me to his house to come for dinner. So I was like, oh no, thank you, Akko, I'm okay, and so on. But he insisted, so I said, okay, why not? And I was welcomed to his home where he was living with his family. And they were very, very simple, it was a room with only like a floor mat. There was no other furniture, one lamp. There was no TV, basically really, really very simple. But he was opening up his door to his home, and he invited me in, and then the wife was bringing some small dishes to try. And they were just very curious about who am I and what I'm doing here and where I'm from, and they wanted to know so many things, And for me, it was very surprising to be invited from a stranger, and he opened up his home to me just because he was friendly, and this was such a nice experience, coming from a Western country where this is not very usual, that somebody is just meeting you on the street and saying, come to my home, I will cook for you, and all this. People in the West are still a little bit more reserved in that area. But that was one very nice experience, and very memorable. I still have this picture in my head of sitting with this family together and talking about all kind of stuff and telling them where I'm from and what is so different between my country and their country. And this was really, really, really nice. And another experience I also had in the beginning was I was looking for a Burmese teacher. And I met this guy who offered his sessions, that he can come to your home and then we can do one-on-one session. And he was in prison. So he was here in Myanmar prison, and then he was telling me the ways of how they were communicating inside of the prison with giving knock signs, so that they can at least communicate with the other prisoners inside of the prison. And he was saying that the way they were living there, he was there also for a very, very long time, and not being able to speak to anybody because it was forbidden. And then the food they were getting, and then also with their own, being occupied with their own mind in these four walls of the prison. And how much learning he had to do to understand himself also, and also to find peace. Because, best example is COVID. We all were in a kind of prison at home. We were not able to go out for a very long time unless it was for some necessary things, right? And we were not able to have any social contact. We were in our own environment, with our own mind, with our own thoughts. And a lot of people went a little bit crazy because they cannot cope up with being alone and with themselves for such a long time. Where again, the Buddhist teaching is coming in a good way, with meditation and with finding, being aligned with yourself and finding inner peace to cope up with something like this. And we have heard crazy stories that abuses at home and fights between families, because you're sticking together 24 hours for a very long time, and then one point there can be an explosion because of some minor misunderstanding and fights and so on. So this was also one very interesting meeting in the beginning of my time here, and just to hear people and their story and their history and what they have experienced and what they have been going through. This was also one amazing experience for myself as well. Yeah, and beside that, I'm here 6 years, and there are many different things I have also seen and experienced through traveling and through meeting different people, and I could go on and on and on with this. But I would say these two were really like a highlight of my stay here. Yeah.
Because like, okay, maybe like whenever time I ride a cab or a taxi, so sometimes like on the way to some place, like if I want to go, let's say to downtown, and sometimes like the taxi driver will say like, aku kanale sound, and then he will go out and just sit somewhere on the side, and I was wondering like, what is he doing there? I don't know what is he actually doing, and then I've been experiencing that for many times, and then maybe because I don't really take take notice about it, but like the last time one time I really like focus on what he really do, and the reason why he's sitting because he wants to pee, but because he's using a longi. So then there's no way for them, and sometimes like taxi driver, they just stop on the middle of the road, and then they just get outside and look for some place to, to pee. So I was like really shocked, like super shocked. I mean, yeah, that's I think one of the funniest experience that I really experienced in Myanmar, especially in Yangon. So for me, I find it very new to me, yeah. I think there's also one thing, like when the first time I moved to Myanmar, so my ex-boss was pick me up from the hotel, from the airport, and then going in on the way to the place where I'm going to stay, I was wondering like why the streets are all like there's a lot of red spots on the street. I was thinking why there's a lot of blood on the street. Not noticing that because most of the taxi driver or some people, they use betel nut and they keep on spitting outside, and then I felt that there's an epidemic going on in Myanmar because of why people are keep on having a blood on the street. But
just happened a couple of days ago. I was going to Kala because I love Kala, and I had this little backpack where I had put a bunch of snacks in it for the trip. And what I didn't realize is that at the bottom of the bag, my husband had put 2 cans of beer. And it was like a cool bag, like where you can put cold things. And so it goes to the scanner, and of course a can of beer is 330 milliliters. It's not allowed, right, because it's too much liquid, and you're not supposed to bring alcohol, I guess, on a flight. And it was 9 in the morning, and so it goes to the scanner, and the agent who's checking the bag says, please open this. And when I open it, all the chocolates and snacks are on the top. So I was like, oh, it's just chocolate. And then she digs in, and then she takes out a can of beer, and I didn't realize that it was in there. So I look at my husband, and I'm like, oopsies. And she goes, don't worry, just drink it now, which is, I suppose, what they usually say. But I was like, it's 9 in the morning. I can't drink this beer right now. And so they were, joking with each other, and they say, okay, you can go. And I feel like anywhere else in the world, people would be very strict about it, and they say, nope, too bad, throw it out. But here, people are they're really nice. They're like, that's okay, let it go.
I haven't told this story a lot, but it's one of my favorite stories of Myanmar. It's actually my very first experience with Myanmar. So I told you I was backpacking for a while. Most of my backpacking involved buses and going through land borders. So I came in from Thailand to Myanmar, but I came in via, please excuse my pronunciation, the Ranong border, Ranong Kotong border. And I have to say I'm honored because I'm actually the only one I've ever met who's done that. Well, me and one other person. That's what this story is about. I crossed this border, and it's a water border. Basically, I leave Ranong, get on a little boat, a small boat, like 6 people on the boat, and then we emigrate in the middle of the river that divides the countries. We're emigrating, and I'm so confused. Okay, fine. So I leave the country, leave Thailand, and then actually I'm in no man's land for a while, and I arrive at the Kotong border, land, and I get off. And every other country in the world, what I would expect to see is there's a government official, someone there to make sure that I don't sneak into their country. And no, it's just a bunch of people milling about, a bunch of Burmese, perhaps Thai as well, Myanmar and Thai as well, milling about. And they, no one seems to care about the foreigner. So I'm looking around, and I'm like, where is immigration? How can I immigrate into this country legally? I have my documents, and I see a very tall foreigner standing there. His name is Simone, Italian guy. Quickly became one of my best friends, but basically, I'm like, I figure if anyone will know, it'll be the foreigner. I'm like, hey. And I said, where can I immigrate? And he's like, oh, come with me. And he takes me, and it's like a 5-minute walk away to the immigration office. But the hilarious thing is, I could have gotten on a bus. I could have sneaked into this country, and I could have just, for the next week, I could have just gone up the border. Not up the border, up through. I could have gone to Bay and everywhere else that I'd been, and not even immigrated legally. No one checked my document. Oh, occasionally people would ask, but really it wasn't that big of a deal. Of course, I did do it legally. It's just hilarious every time I think about the fact that I could have sneaked into this country very easily. I assume it's because the Kotong border has almost no foreigners crossing it. Maybe at the height of tourism, they probably have one every week, maybe 2. That fact that Simone happened to be there, and honestly, I love Simone. He's I met that guy on the border, and him and I traveled for a month together through Myanmar, and then I went to visit him in Italy. And we've traveled again in Thailand later, but really such an amazing guy. We traveled up to the Way together, and while we were there, we traveled down actually to Paradise Beach. So we took a bike and went down to Paradise Beach, stayed in a bungalow, and that night. There was just me, him, a very nice Italian woman, and this couple. That night, we're at the beach, and the Italian woman starts to build a bonfire on the beach. So we help her out with that, and we get it lit, and as soon as we do, it rains. And the fire goes out. And we're running from the rain, and we go inside one of the structures, and eventually it's lightning, it's raining, it's late in the night, and I say, let's go swimming. So we all run, we're just like, fine, let's run. We run into the water, and of course there's no one there to stop us. We're the only ones on the beach, and while we're there playing around, swimming, enjoying, I notice something weird. And I say, wait, and I run back. And I grab some of the goggles, underwater goggles. Yes. And I come back and I look inside, and it's bioluminescent algae.
Oh, wow.
They're the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It's when every time the lightning flashes, the algae flash as well, and we can see it, and then we start playing with it, and I had been looking for these for years. I'd been waiting to find them, and I just randomly found them on Paradise Beach in Dway. We spent an hour in the water playing around, enjoying, and we got out when it stopped raining, and the bonfire was actually still lit for some reason, and we managed to get it going again, and then it started raining again. So we're like, okay, we're done, we're going to bed. And that night, Simone and I were sharing a room, and we were chatting, and we're like, this was a perfect night. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I want to leave because there is no way tomorrow will be as good as tonight, and I don't want tomorrow to ruin tonight. And he completely agrees, and so we say our goodbyes the next morning. And actually, I think there was only one day left that the Paradise Beach was open because it was rainy season was starting. So, and we head back up to Dway, and that's one of my favorite stories.
I think one of the biggest and perhaps also most positive surprises was how intermingled the different faiths are in Myanmar without most people maybe realizing. If you, for example, go to Sula Pagoda, you can see two mosques close to it. And you are within a few hundred meters of 2 or 3 Christian churches. And if you go west, then you walk past a Hindu temple, and then a little bit further, there's a Chinese temple. So because of recent political problems, people often forget how cosmopolitan Yangon actually is. And that perhaps is a unique thing to Yangon, maybe not so much to other parts of the country, but it is quite amazing that you have so many different distinct religions living side by side in relative peace and prosperity. The street that I live on in Sanchang, right across from me, there's a Sikh family. There's a lot of Muslims living in my neighborhood. I can see there's a mosque down by the main road, and if I go to one of the side streets behind my apartment, there's also a really small Hindu temple. And I find that very refreshing. But obviously that kind of interreligious harmony is not constant, even in Yangon. There is, of course, a complex history to it. But it's a reminder of Yangon's unique colonial past. A lot of people don't realize this, but at some point in the 1930s, this was the most international city in the world in terms of number of foreigners living and arriving here. And we see it today in the colonial heritage of the architecture all over the city. One of the things that surprised me the most of living and working in Myanmar is how self-aware people are, especially young people, about their knowledge gaps and the incredible eagerness to learn. I can't even count the number of times that somebody has told me, I need to learn more, I need to learn this particular skill set, or I don't have enough critical thinking skills, I'm not good enough at communication and writing, etc., etc. And I think that's incredible. It's very humbling that people and fascinating that people have that kind of critical self-awareness about the missing skill sets, about the problems in the education system, and what they need to learn to move forward and to achieve their dreams and aspirations. So you mentioned this. I think you're right. There's an incredible amount of opportunity right now, but of course, that's part of this whole historical and political transition. Myanmar is at a watershed moment, and if certain national issues and regional issues and conflicts don't get resolved, Myanmar will not reap the benefits and the potential economic opportunities from it, in spite of having this very large, young, and eager workforce.